I briefly talked about QK Norris's input lag video in my previous one, saying that it was a great example of somebody doing their own testing, but also pointing out that it was its chosen title that helped it to reach the top of the subreddit, amidst the period when the community is complaining that CS2 feels laggier than CSGO did. And people were happy to use his video as the smoking gun proof that the game had an input lag problem. Turns out it does, but that it's a bit more localized and literal than I expected. So I've already done my own frame rate and frame time testing and didn't find anything out of the normal other than an eCore related issue that QK Norris's setup wouldn't have, as well as an overall increased burden on my computer components with CS2, which I've assumed is Source 2 being heavier than Source 1 is, and is possibly the reason why so many people are claiming that the game feels different to CSGO. But what I was testing for wasn't quite the same as input lag, which should include the whole process of pressing the button to the resulting image being displayed on your screen. This is a lot harder to test and with a lot more variables. But fortunately, QK Norris does have some handy tools which should help him to measure this. So in his video he was saying that not only is the input lag between his computer and his monitor slightly higher in CS2, but that it's more variable. And he theorised that it was this increased variance that was causing the game to feel laggier when moving the mouse about, giving the game a different feel from CSGO. He certainly found something, but it wasn't what he thought it was. The way he tested was to see how long it took for his gun to fire when he pressed the fire button, using his monitor's built-in features to scan for changes on the screen around the gun's muzzle, because a gun firing should be something that's instant, shouldn't it? But it turns out that the muzzle flare in CS2 is slightly delayed. So what he was really testing was how long it took for the muzzle flash to be displayed after pressing the fire button, which appeared to fire in sync with the tick rate. This means that on a 64-tick server, depending on where between the ticks you fire, there can be up to 16 milliseconds of variation, compared with just 8 on a 128-tick server. Here's the thing though, CSGO also waited for the next tick before displaying the muzzle flash. Yet when he did this in his testing, it took roughly half the time that CS2 took. So what it looks like is going on here is that he's testing CSGO at 128 tick and Counter-Strike 2 at just 64, and it's this tick rate difference that is causing the different amounts of input lag. Only he can confirm for sure whether this is how he's tested it. From the footage he shows, which as a YouTuber I know can sometimes be recorded after the matter, it shows that CSGO's net graph is displaying 128 tick, because there's a blob here where the 1 in 128 is, whereas if it was a 64 tick server then there wouldn't be a blob here at all, hence 128 tick. Whereas CS2 could very well be running at 64 tick, given how it was hard-coded to do that on September the 14th, his spreadsheet was made on the 15th, many of his video clips are shown to be made on the 15th and 16th, all suggesting to me that he tested CS2 at 64 tick. Also he told me. So we have a possible explanation. Thanks to him, we've discovered that muzzle flashes can be made to feel more instant, if they're displayed on our screen instantly, instead of waiting for, presumably, the next tick. Bear in mind this won't affect your aim, nor where the shot will land. Another top-rated post is showing how effective CS2's sub-tick system is at retroactively calculating where you were aiming at the time of pressing your fire button, even if, by the time your gun fires, you're pointing somewhere completely different. This whole thing shows how hard it is to test stuff, because even if you find something, it might not be what you think you're testing for. I'm not saying that QK Norris's video title should have been a full list of all the settings he tested and a literal explanation of everything he discovered, because that's impossible. But his chosen title, that CS2 has an input lag problem, has resulted in some users using his video as confirmation of what we can now assume are unrelated issues that they've been having with the game. I want to thank QK Norris for doing his testing. It's people like him and the testing that he's doing that will really help discover problems with this game. In his case, he has helped identify something about the game that could be improved. He told me that he also tested CSGO on a 64-tick server, but that his client was set to 128 tick. If this is the case, and given that this muzzle flare delay is merely a visual issue, this sounds like we could set the client-side tick rate to something high like 512 to get almost instant visual feedback, even if it doesn't affect the goings-on server side. Anyway, the great thing is, he hinted to me that he's going to redo his tests and I can't wait to see the results. I'm interested to see what would happen if he redid the tests but with CSGO's client side set to 64 tick. And then, if he still wants to test the input lag, he could retest both games but with a mouse movement test instead of a gun firing test, which would be a better way to test whether mouse movements are different in CS2 than they are in CSGO. Just be careful not to get banned. That's what I'd be interested to see next. No pressure, no assumptions. As you can imagine, this whole thing has left me quite paranoid about saying anything with absolute certainty. And you should feel that way too. And because I was too quick to make assumptions myself, I was wrong in my previous video when I blamed some of you for thinking it's the smoking gun proving that the game is broken, because it was the smoking gun that proved the game was broken. Or at least had a tiny bit of delay to the visual firing effect. Whatever.